Hello and welcome back to Bromwood Farm. I'm not gonna lie, this week has been hella tough. You would think with the sun finally coming out and so possibly the growing season finally starting to get better, that life on the farm might become more of that sort of rosy bucolic feeling. But no, when you've got livestock, you've got dead stock. And this week, the animals have been putting me through it. So this video is going to be a bit of two halves. One, all of the traumatic events that have gone on this week, but then countering it with some of the positive stuff as well. So the week started off a little rough because one of my dogs, Bo, was just really off her game. She is stoic when it comes to scrapes, cuts, grazes, but she was not eating. She was being sick. My friend came over. She didn't even get out of her crate. We knew there was something wrong. I gave it 48 hours. I don't like to rush animals straight to the vet because sometimes they just feel a bit off and then the next day they're better. But in the end, I took her to the vets. They gave her some anti-nausea, which cost a bomb. It was like £140 just for an anti-nausea drug. She came home. She basically jumped out of the car, ran to the cabin and was back to completely normal. So I thought, here we go, that's fine. Well, who would know that that was the start of animal craziness this week with people getting ill, people getting injured, and animals dying. So one thing I've been really happy about this year is the laying of my ornamental pheasants. They've been doing a fantastic job. I've had lots of wonderful eggs and I've had loads of eggs in the incubator. And finally, I've managed to seemingly crack raising pheasants. I've had great difficulty in the past getting them past the 2-week date. They would be fine and then suddenly they would die. This year, I increased the amount of high protein food I was giving them, and I actually have been collecting bugs from around the farm and feeding them to them, and that higher protein has seemed to be working in terms of letting them grow, and I haven't had any deaths. So the other night I thought it's warm enough now to finally move them from inside into an aviary. So I put them into the aviary. There was a slightly older chick in the aviary, but he didn't seem to mind. I watched them carefully all day. I came out at midnight to check they weren't cold. They were fine. I was then woken by the sheep at 5 a.m. That's a whole nother story that we'll get onto. So I got up, I moved the sheep back to where they were supposed to do, and I checked on the chicks. Again, totally fine. Less than 2 hours later, half of them were maimed. So it seems in those 2 hours that this slightly older chick decided to just kill everybody. So I had 10 chicks, 8 silvers, 1 golden, 1 reeves, and the older chick basically went round and scalped half of the batch. I literally cannot believe how quickly this happened. I know that pheasants and quails can do this, and actually sadly earlier in the season my cock Amherst boy murdered my hen. I think they were mating. He maybe drew a bit of blood on her head and he ended up picking her to death. And this is something that can happen. But I was so thrilled that I had managed to grow these chicks up to that level, and I barely had any losses. And then I'd been really careful about moving them outside, acclimatizing to making sure they're all okay, and then bam, in the space of 2 hours, gone. Now on to sheep. Sheep have been an absolute pain, and there are 2 sheep in particular, Missy and Lola. They are Susan's babies from last year, and they have been an absolute nightmare in terms of escaping. Come on, they're fairly friendly, and that's because they're bottle-fed lambs. But they, unlike everybody else, they have a huge 15-acre field that they're roaming. Everybody else is completely happy, healthy. Missy and Lola spend every opportunity to escape and then to wind their way through to the market garden and get into it. So I'm really not sleeping very well because every time I hear a bar, I think it's them in the garden. So I'm very tired and I'm very stressed out by those 2. So Missy and Lola are going to go to the abattoir and get eaten because I can't deal with them, and I'm not palming the problem off to somebody else. When they next escape, when I have the opportunity, I'm going to move them into the barn and keep them in the barn in a pen and just have to feed them up some hard feed and hay, and then they're going because I can't deal with escaping sheep anymore. Goats have also been the other issue. The goats have started to free range again. I know, I said I never would, but actually they're in really good health at the moment. I had a massive parasite issue that's completely under control. And so I have been free ranging them in the day and then at night bringing them back. And to a point, they have been really, really good. However, they have now suddenly decided that they actually do want to go into the market garden and they will climb over the hurdles that are currently surrounding it. And this morning got in and ate all the tops of my peas and pulled out some kale and decimated some sea holly. Thank God I'm living on site now, because if I wasn't and I came back, they would have just ruined everything. So you can see that quite a lot's been going on this week, and so stress levels have been quite high. But we're not done. I've got a pair of little Rosa Borks in the aviary, and they've been sitting on eggs, and they hatched out a chick, and sadly it died. Not unsurprising, first time parents, never reared chicks before. That can often happen, but again, just another little thing on top of everything else that makes you go, oh, that's a bit sad. And then my lovely farm cat Horace, it was only a couple of days after Bo was poorly. I came out in the morning and his face was smashed to bits. It looked like he had blunt force trauma to his face. It was swollen, his eye was really almost popping out, he was covered in blood, he had no bite marks or anything. Took him to the vets. The vet said it was going to cost £2,000 to hospitalise him and scan him to see exactly what was wrong. I mean, I don't have that money, and also even if I did, for a farm cat, you've got kind of to justify, can I afford that for the farm cat when actually I've got 200 plus other animals to look after? So we decided to put him on pain meds and anti-inflammatories, bring him home and see how he went. His swelling has gone down a lot. His jaw isn't broken, but his eye, I think, is gone. We also think he's got a fractured skull because there is air bubbles between the skull and the skin on his head. So when you stroke his head, it kind of pops over a little bit. He has finally gone to the toilet, but he's not eating on his own. He's not drinking on his own. So I'm having to do that for him and giving him with a syringe. And it's, even if I can get him better, it's still, they said, going to cost about £1,000 to have the eye taken out, which again, I can't afford. And also, should I? Because he's a farm cat. Could he live happily with one eye? Is he going to be debilitated? Is he not going to have the best life? Could that £1,000 that I'm going to put myself into debt for actually be better spent just on the farm for the other animals? So it's a real waiting game with Horace. If everything else improves, if he starts eating again on his own, starts drinking again on his own, shows signs of recuperation, then I may think about it. But that's been really, really super stressful. So he's living in the bathroom, and you know, I wish I had the money to throw at him. I would love to have infinite money to throw at all the animals and give them everything they could ever want and pay for expensive surgeries, but life is life and I don't. So that's kind of been a really tough decision. And then finally, I've been having issues with birds, both domestic, chickens, and wild, blackbirds. So the blackbirds is being an absolute pain in my garden. Coming in, I sowed a load of carrots the other day. It came in and it dug up every single line of carrots that I had put in. I just don't know how to stop a blackbird coming in. I've got some CDs hanging on strings and things that seem to scare away wood pigeons. But other than netting my entire garden, how do you stop a blackbird? I find that really difficult. The other thing is the chickens have been escaping, partly because of the sheep breaking in and breaking down their fences, Missy and Lola. But they've been coming out and dust bathing in my 2 raised beds where the soil is really, really dry. And so pulling out things that I've planted in. So one has got some zinnia and some pumpkins in, and the other I'm about to put some sunflowers in, but they have just turned it into a giant dust bath. So I'm now very afraid of putting anything in there because it will get destroyed. However, despite all the drama llama, there is good stuff as well. So the pheasant chicks, yes, we've lost them, but despite the pheasants now being in kind of their full molt, we are still getting fertile eggs. And so I have still got eggs to put in the incubator to hatch out some more. And for the first time ever, Eve, our female Reeves pheasant, has gone broody. So she's actually on a clutch. I decided, let me leave her on a clutch and see what difference we get with raising pheasant chicks. If it's better for her to raise them than it is for me to raise them artificially. So there are fingers crossed for that. Broody Towers is still full of chicks. We still have the Muscovy ducklings that hatched out about a month ago now, I think. And we have another Muscovy duck sitting on eggs as well. So hopefully there'll be some more of those. Mr. Foxy came in over, or Mrs. Foxy came in over the winter and decimated my khaki Campbells. But we had some fertile eggs left and they hatched. So we have replacements, and we've got these 3 that are a bit older and some more in the grower shed. And as you can see, there's also a load of our chicks from this year that are coming on nicely. Some silkies, some Moran bantams and some Norfolk greys. And the fox also took out my trio of miniature silver appleyards, which I was gutted about. However, there's a bit of a surprise, because although I only thought I put large fowl appleyard eggs into the incubator, I must have randomly found some duck eggs on the farm and thrown them in and not labelled them, because 2 have hatched out and 2 are miniature appleyards. It looks like a boy and a girl, obviously they're brother and sister, but it does mean that I know a couple of other people that I might be able to do swapsies with, and so their line hasn't died, and we've still got some mini appleyards, which is just great. Also, as much as the sheep have been doing my head in, I'm also finding a lot of pleasure in them as well. So, you know, sometimes I want to get rid of them all, other times I don't, because walking down in the evenings and taking in the sheep on the pasture as they're grazing is just a delight. My shearing skills have got much better as well. I've sheared most of them now, and actually I'm getting some beautiful fleeces. And there's some lambs on the way. I know, lambs in the middle of summer shouldn't be happening, but Puck got in with the teenage girls last year, and at least one of them is pregnant. She's got quite a big udder now. And Amora, our Norfolk Horn, was really late getting tupped. Ooh. I thought she was due the 13th of June because that's when I saw her being tupped. It seems that it's even later because she didn't give birth on the 13th of June, but she is bagging up, so something's happening. So there are more lambs on the way as well, which is a delight, despite the fact that I've told you already that the sheep are doing my head in. Because I do love sheep, just certain sheep are very frustrating. Also, despite the incursions into the market garden, actually still doing well. As you saw from a previous video, the first veg box went out. There are harvests to be had. I have been also harvesting some lovely cut flowers, which I've been selling. And that patch where the chickens are dust bathing, I'm going to make it super wet. So I'm going to sodden the ground, make the ground really sodden so it's not conducive to dust bathing. I'm going to plant into it, and then I'm going to net over the top. And hopefully that will allow to keep the chickens off for long enough for the plants to get established, and create a dense layer that will no longer be a dust bath. So there is light. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is blue sky. And yes, it can feel like a lot sometimes, but also it's rather wonderful.